Morning. This is the president of the Small Ruminants Association of Jamaica, TrevorBernard. I'm here with Mr. Sterling to visit his rabbit farm. And we are here now in his... Mr. Sterling.
Hi,
Morning. We are here now in a little section of his farm where he has his forages, and we're going to just discuss that. Well, as usual, he has his, king grass here, and he has different plants inside here. One of the questions asked all the time was, what was, the Spanish needle?
Spanish needle. Right?
Yeah, this is a example of what Spanish needle. You can just show them, pick the leaf and show them.
Right. Most persons recognize Spanish needle by its blossoms. This one isn't blooming very
That's the
heavily
blossom.
now, but there's another section I can show you where it actually opens, right? And it's very brittle down the bottom, so you can just simply break it off.
It breaks very easily. Rabbits really love Spanish needle. They go crazy when they get it. We'll put some around there and carry this piece of the Spanish needle and show you. But this is a little area where he has some of his forages that he uses to harvest and feed some of his animals. We have some interesting things to show you now. Let's go and have a look. We are here now around the back of his farm where he rears the animals in his backyard. As you know, rabbits are very quiet animals. They don't make a lot of noise, so you can have them in your backyard.
Have them in your backyard, that's correct.
Very easily. And he has some of the rabbits, he has them on the ground, and he has some of them in the cages. And he has them here. I will give some of these, I don't know if they'll eat. They are now eating the coconut. Can you explain this coconut that you were explaining to me?
All right, well, I discovered simply by accident that rabbits enjoy coconuts. So by getting the green coconut and cutting it in half, you find that it's much easier for them to manage it, and they'll eat it right down to almost nothing. However, what I have done is that I've given it to them every other day, and then I remove the uneaten parts and dump it.
One of the things he was explaining is that they eat inside the coconut. They eat it out like this. So when they finish, just the skin is left, and they eat out all of the stuff inside the coconut.
Sometimes they eat the skin too.
Sometimes the skin.
Yeah, the skin
But
as well.
the advantage of the skin of eating this coconut, as you was explaining, Mr. Sterling, was that the manure.
The manure, right. One of the issues that persons generally have with animal manure is that it generally carries a lot of weeds.
Right.
Right, so when they eat the coconut, you'll find that you really don't have that issue, as well as the accumulation of debris in the pens. You find that it's a lot easier to maintain the cleanliness of the environment.
In other words, what he's saying, when they eat this coconut, the manure drops through the mesh very easily, and it keeps the mesh clean. Here is another guy coming here to eat some, and they clean the cage bottom, keeps a lot more cleansing. But what happens now with this manure? You can easily take this manure and give it to the flowers people to use in your garden, because what happens when they eat this coconut is that you will not have any seeds inside the manure that will grow on people's lawn and on their flower beds and so forth, and turn a weed and a parasite inside their garden. So that is the advantage of this coconut shell. As to the nutritional value, I don't know. I don't know. What is your opinion?
Well, I've been looking at it, and unfortunately, I can't come across any data that did a breakdown of the shell of the coconut. So right now, I really don't know.
Right. So this is the shell of the coconut he uses. Well, I know it is going to be good roughage.
Yeah.
So when you give them the bag feed, now you have these coconut shell, you split it up in 4, and you give it to the rabbits, and it must be useful because you're using it.
Yeah, as well as coconut oil is a very important part of your diet.
Right.
And if it is that the rabbits are consuming the ingredients or the product that makes that oil, it would stand to reason that they must be getting some form of a nutritional benefit from it.
From it, right. So now let's have a look at your cages and some of your rabbits. you can have a look here. He has, these are his growth pens, right?
Growth pens, right. This particular cage, I put in my growth cages, 1 rabbit per square foot.
Okay.
This cage can in fact hold a lot more, but we have recently taken out some of the rabbits from it for harvesting.
Okay. So as you can see, he has
come around.
Bigger pens. We're going to look on the other side. So he has these larger pens that he uses for growth. So when he weans the smaller rabbits from the mothers, they put them inside these pens and grow them out inside these pens, in these larger pens. Usually,
what I'm going to show you here is the extent to which they actually consume the coconut. Right down. Bearing in mind that this was once a quarter.
now what usually happens in these growth pens is that you have to keep them together at the same age, or else they like to fight, a lot of fighting. And it should also be noted that rabbits, usually you keep them by themselves. You put the female by herself, and usually you bring the female to the male when you are doing breeding. And they are, what is the word, nocturnal. They are also nocturnal right. Animals. They like to feed at night, right. And they like to be by themselves. And if you put a lot of them together, especially when they are mature, they will fight. And very dangerous, fight to death, you know, very dangerous.
As well as one of the things that I had to take note of is that if you have mature males with immature females and they try to mate with them, they'll damage the males by biting their testicles.
Right. And the fighting too. When they fight, when two males fight, if you put them together, they try to damage the testicles of each other. Yeah, they will rip it out. Very, very aggressive fighters. And if you have them on a big piece of land, like in the yard, if you let them out in the yard like this, they will run and charge each other in the sky, almost jumping and try to damage each other's testicles. Yeah. Around this side, he has
one of my growth pens.
Growth pens. He has more rabbits together. You can do this growth like this and have many rabbits in one pen, but they all have to be in there at the same time.
Age.
Same right. Age, same time almost. If you were to put the rabbits, you know, 2 weeks apart, or, you know, from 2 different litter far apart, you might have fighting.
You are going to have a problem.
You're going to have a problem with the fighting.
All of these were born within a day or 2 of each other.
Right. And
at weaning, you bring them together, allow them to grow out, but once you allow them to, you cannot allow them to mature in the growth pen.
If you notice the mesh, he has a half by half mesh, and it's all meshed to the ground, to the bottom of the pen, and then the manure just falls on the ground, and then you can harvest this manure now to make compost and, you know, put it on your plants and so forth. Now he has pens.
This is another set of pens.
All against the wall.
These are accessed from the top, not the side.
Right. So his pens, he accesses it from the top. And notice your feeders. He used a 4-inch PVC pipe, and he caps it on both sides, and he used that to feed with his water.
Right. As well as the grain.
And he used it also for the grain. That's how he feeds the animals.
If I use any other form of plastic, they'll eat it right down.
Right. On the board. If you use board inside the pen, they'll eat down the board. And also, when you're building these pens, you have to also be aware that you're not to use certain type of lumber. Also, you mustn't use treated lumber. You must use untreated lumber because of the poison in the board. So poisonous plants, and they are very easy to get sick and very easy. They're easy to poison, very easy to get sick, are very, very delicate. But once they have clean water, clean food, the pellets and clean, they don't usually get sick. Yeah. And they are very, very hardy. But
this particular mother would be due for delivery around the 30th of this month.
She's now pregnant.
If you notice that she's a little bit fat on the other side. This one, however, as well as that one, they'll be due more on the 17th, 14th to the 17th of next month.
Okay, so that's the gestation period is
30 days.
30 days is gestation period. It can be a little off, plus or minus a day.
Depending on the breed of the rabbit, it's generally between 28 to 31 days.
31 days, right.
My breeds generally come on time at around 30 days.
30 days. So that's the gestation period. And you usually breed them, how often do you breed your females?
One female I do her about every 3 months.
Every 3 months.
Right, so you find that she's pregnant for a month. She weans in 6 weeks, so that's 2.5 months. And then I rest her before she goes back out.
Okay. Yeah, I must also note that in intensive farming, rabbit rearing is also done on an intensive farming method, where they almost just breed continually. They don't rest or anything.
Yes, that can also be done
Yes.
while she is nursing.
Yes.
However, you have to make sure that her diet
is
very high,
up there.
So that she doesn't fall off shape.
Usually a lot of pellets, a lot of high protein, a very good pellets.
A high protein diet.
Yes, you have to have a high protein pellet diet. And I think I have seen where they breed them back in 4 weeks, 6 weeks. Different.
Yeah, depending on how aggressive you want to be. But
Right.
once you're going that aggressive, it also impacts on the lifespan and the condition
That's correct.
of the female rabbit.
So usually within 1 year you have to cull
yeah.
and restart back again.
Right.
So this is how it is done in the intensive rabbit rearing perspective. They breed like this back to back, and they do a lot of culling, which is very important. If a rabbit is only having 2 or 3, cull. They want to see litter size of at least 8.
6 and up.
6 and up, So that is what the aim is, and so they do a lot of culling in rabbit rearing. There is also situations where the females, if you can talk about that, sometimes they don't feed the young ones, for example.
Right. No,
And-
that does occur from time to time, and which is also one of the reasons why, for commercial purposes, you do not want to breed one rabbit, so that you'll be able to take the kids from the mother who gave birth to her and give her to another mother who also have kids, and she will foster it.
So normally you breed a group of rabbit, maybe 8 or 10 together,
From
or
eight-
whatever
eight-
the numbers it can
eight-
be.
eight going up.
And then when you do that now, if you have a mother that only has 3 or 4, you can share the kids.
Share the kids.
So sometimes they'll have 12, 15 young ones, and you can just share, and make all the mothers have nursing the same amount of young ones. Pellets. What your pellets look like? We're going to have a look at the pellets. You have any other pellets we can show you?
Well, we can take some out of this.
What
This is a formulation that we get from the feed manufacturer.
Right.
That is
So this is
specifically formulated for
and
us.
usually it has alfalfa in there. And another thing with rabbits are very sensitive to corn. They can't eat too much corn, or they get bloated if they eat corn or those kind of things. You have to be careful of what you feed them with. So there shouldn't be any corn in this feeding. And I know of some farmers who like to give rabbits like cabbage and certain things. There are certain things that are not good for rabbits. They are very simple eaters.
Yesterday was their merengue day, and this is what is left of the merengue branches that I put in the cage.
So he tries to run his farm in a natural way. So he gives them merengue once a week, coconuts,
right, as well as the Spanish needle
and the Spanish needle when it's available. So these are, some amount of medicinal plants and so forth that they give them in the forages. And usually, rabbits usually eat a lot of the same things that goats and sheep eat also. Some of those forages you can test them with it and so forth. But goats will eat some poisonous plants that the rabbit will not eat or tolerate. So we have to bear that in mind also. But it is a relatively easy animal to manage. The main thing though, it requires a lot of work, because you have to take care of them every single day. And you have to go to each individual cage. You have to breed. I don't know, you do your breeding at night also?
No, I tend to do it early in the early morning.
Right.
And the reason for that is, from a male perspective, the testicles need to be kept cool.
Yes.
So you find that in the mornings, well, they would have had all night to cool off, and in the mornings, in my opinion, they would be more potent. So
well, it's not an opinion.
That's the time.
Rabbits are more fertile. They have more sperm count when the time is cool. And I remember when I went abroad once, what they did, they actually, when they are doing their breeding program, they put the male in an air-conditioned room.
Okay.
They actually air-condition, yes. They put the males in an air-conditioned room, and then they bring the females. You always bring the female to the male, and they carry the females to the males, and they get better breeding results, especially with like Flemish giant.
Okay.
Yeah, they tend to do that because they tend not to breed very well when the time is very, very hot.
That is
So in Jamaica, we have, I think we mainly have crossbreed rabbits.
Yeah, my rabbits that I have here are mainly a cross between the Flemish Giants and the Californian.
Right, and we have the New Zealand here. You have the domino looking
The checkered.
The checkered is also here. So you have many different breeds. A lot of varieties of different rabbits are here for breeding. So yeah.
Another concern that I'd also like to mention, which is one of the risk factors with rabbits, is that sometimes they'll die giving childbirth.
Yes.
And you would end up losing that mother. So for that reason, one of the things that I also do, I have to also keep spare does in my cages. And if you come this way, we can have a look at a couple of those. This is one of the cages where I keep my spare does. Right, so we have 4 of them here, and then we have another set elsewhere. And because these are all the same sex, in other words, they're all female, we really don't have that much of an issue with fighting. So
sometimes the females will fight though, but especially if they grow together, then you don't have that fighting problem.
And you have to make that selection from before you're putting them in the growth cage.
Right.
So you
So
select
there are
those that you
certain
want for
qualities that you usually look for in a rabbit, in terms of length also. The ears, you always want the ears to stand up straight. And generally their body condition, you want the legs to look a certain way for breeding purposes. That's a whole different discussion, but you have to look at their breed characteristics and their body and conformation and so forth, just like with goats.
Yeah, as well as, I'm going to close it now, as well as the rate at which they're growing.
Yes.
So you want a rabbit that is,
growing very quickly. So one of the things is that you usually weigh them. You weigh them every week. And you watch that growth rate. So record keeping is very important with rabbit rearing also. You weigh them at first week, second week, third week, and you look at this growth rate as they go along. And usually slaughtering happens at about what age?
It is normally done at around 8 weeks, about 2 to 3 months.
Yes.
But personally, I give them 3 to 4 months.
Right. So in the world all over, it's usually about 8 weeks. That's because they want the meat when it is very tender and soft when they are cooking. So like the hotels and these expensive restaurants usually want the rabbit at this time, at 8 weeks. So
over here we also have some babies.
Yes. So this is some of the babies. This is your kitten box. So you use an open style box.
Right.
That the rabbits usually, they pluck the fur. We can't see that here now, but they usually pluck the fur at the front of their bodies right here.
From all over.
All over, yes. And then they make a nesting thing for the young ones, and then they have them in there. So they are all covered in fur. Because the rabbits, when they are just born, they are naked. There's no hair on their bodies. And then the mothers go in that and feed them.
Unfortunately, I don't have any examples of those. That will be coming until next week.
Right. So you look how they're nice. This is what people love, these little baby ones. If you see them, they are so cute when they are small. So they will nurse. These young ones are old now.
They're about 2.5 to 3 weeks.
2.5 to 3 weeks now. And that's how small. So she's not going to show. See, they are feeding. See, they are feeding there now. They're trying to feed the mother, and she's running away.
Yeah,
look,
they're ready to feed them in.
Right, they go under there and they are sucking the nip. They lean on their back. I hope you saw that. See one of them, they're feeding. They go on their backs and they nurse and feed. See, that's what's happening there. They are feeding from the mother. Very nice. Yes. We'd also like to look at how you sex a rabbit. If you can give us a look on sexing the rabbit.
Okay.
So now he's going to get one of the rabbits and he'll show you how you hold them. You usually hold them in their neck like that. And we are going to now sex the animals. He's going to show you how you know the male from the female. So
No, This is a young one. They're not really used to being handled. So you put her down here. And then you press back.
So
Press back. If you look closely, you'll see that this one has a slit on the top of the genitals going down. So this would be a female.
So this is a female when it has
Right.
that slit, and that's
Right.
how you sex them and know the male from the female.
Right.
Let's try and see if we find
the
another
male-
one now.
The male ones are generally round.
And they are generally a little bigger too.
Yeah. Calming down a little.
Look like a female. Female. Male? Male. What do you think? Male. I don't think
Female.
It's a female, yeah. You see the slit though?
The thing is, in the litter,
That white one.
you get more females than males. Yeah,
Male.
this one is male.
So this is a male, and you can see,
the roundness.
and it's pointed and round. So this is definitely a male. And one of the things you notice is that the rabbits come in all different colors. You know, that's another thing that you could note. So now we have seen, you can know the males different from the females. So as they grow bigger, you're going to have to do your separation. Usually, most of the males go to butcher.
Yeah.
And you select back your best females, best growth rate. So when you do record keeping, you are able to know the best growth rate. So these are the animals that you keep back, the ones that have the best growth rate, best configuration, and you usually select breeding females from your females who are the best mother, who produces the most milk for the kid, feeding and doing a very good job at them. So those are the females that you keep. So we're going to have a look at here now.
Rabbits. He's still pretty young.
This is a blue rabbit. Something that was sorted after gone back. I actually had imported the blue rabbits at one point into Jamaica a couple of years ago with the Flemish giants, but it's very rare, still very rare.
And what I also want to show you now is the cage design over here.
Mr. Sterling's cage design. He has these cages against his wall on the side, and he's going to explain some of his cage design that he did here. So there are many different ways of making your cages. Mr. Sterling here, he does everything very, very simple. And so go ahead, Mr. Sterling.
One of the challenges I foresaw, because I'm looking to getting into rabbits in a commercial way, is the limitation of space. So if you have a small amount of space but you wish to do rabbit rearing, you can put the cages on top of each other. So we have cages on the top and we have cages on the bottom. But in the middle, what I did initially was to use a continuous sheeting to facilitate the runoff of the rabbit droppings, and it rotted out the mesh. So what I had to subsequently do was to install, this is linoleum, and it seemed to have alleviated the problem somewhat. So in the future I have to go around, go through and ensure that in the areas where the continuous sheeting is, to put linoleum on it. Or you might have noticed on some of the growth cages, I use pond liners as a covering, so that could also be used in between here to facilitate the catching of the droppings. One of the things I also learned is that I needed to have increased the runoff, the angle, so that the runoff from the droppings
Need to be about 45
Right.
degrees.
Well, I didn't know that at the time I was doing my cage.
Right.
So this isn't as efficient as I wanted it to. So these cages are entered in from the side. Interestingly, this is one of those that have young kits in it. I don't know if the camera can come up and catch them at the back. Yeah. She has about 3 of them in there. And I don't know if you're able to notice, but her fur has just started growing back after she has done her nest building. Now, one of the things you also need to bear in mind when you're raising rabbits in the tropics is that when she removes her fur, it fills the box, and the kits are in there and they are not able to regulate their own body temperature as well as the adults would be able to. So it is necessary to remove some of that fur that the mother would have placed in it, so as to create a space in the box where the kids can move in and out of the fur. So they have an option, so if they're cold, they can go under the fur.
What age you usually remove some of that fur? At what point?
Immediately.
Okay.
Because it gets very hot, especially during the summer. And I learned it the hard way in that I would lose an entire litter because everybody stayed in there and overheat.
Because what happened, they pick off, they pluck so much fur off their body that they will fill the entire litter box with fur and it becomes too warm. So you have to remove some of the fur so that the babies have a choice to keep warm and go towards the fur or remove away from the fur. So you have to give them that choice. So you take out some of the fur so you can create that environment.
Right, and you'll notice that while you're removing some of the fur, they'll tend to be bouncing around, right. Which is how they'll eventually be able to move from the warmest sections of the cage to the cooler section of the cage, and they will generally do that in the nights. So in the nights when the temperature comes down, they'll tend to go back. They
go back in the fur at night, and during the day they will come out of the fur.
Right, in order to keep.
Do you have problems with rat? Is rat a problem?
Initially it was, and it only affected them when they were at this stage. In that, if you notice that even though they are small, I've already removed the nesting box from it.
Right.
And my nesting box do not have a cover on it, and that was also no longer have a cover on it, and that was one of the reasons. In that when the rat gets into the cage, the mother jumps on top of the nesting box, and the rats and the babies are left on the floor to the mercy of the rats, and they'll go in and they'll kill every single one. So there was one morning when I came and I lost almost all my baby rabbits except one cage. And the only difference with that cage was the nesting box was not in it.
Was not in the cage?
Was not in the cage. So the rats didn't trouble that mother.
So the mother sits on
goes on the top of the nesting box, especially because it's covered, right? And then the rats gets a free rein on the kids that are on the bottom. But when the mother and the kids are in the cage, you'll find that the rats will excite the mother, and she'll be bouncing around in the cage. And as a result of which, I'm just theorizing, you'll find that the rats will not choose to because she can trample it.
Right.
So the kids stay safe. And after that incident, when I realized what was happening, I have never lost a single kid.
So they can manage themselves.
They can manage themselves. And importantly, when you're feeding your rabbits pellets, with the exception of the grow cage, you want to feed your rabbits enough pellets so that it is consumed during the day, so that you don't really have any feed in your cages to encourage the rats coming in to feed.
So when you feed the rabbits, you have to make sure, even with the goats when we are doing that, you feed the pellets and you do not leave feeding in the feeding trough or the feeding box overnight, so you don't have a rat problem.
Right, and that's where the coconut and the grass and
so you feed the plant material in the night. Merengue, coconut, grass, any of those forages, you feed that during the night time, and during the daytime, you feed pellets during the day. This is the ideal situation. You must always have water. Funny enough, he uses manual means of feeding with his water, but you also have automatic feeders for water, where they have a little nipple, much like the pig nipple, that you can give them fresh water through the nipple. And also you have automatic feeders for even the feeding on the pellets. But the problem is The rats is a problem
Yeah,
with
rats is a
automatic
problem.
feeder, right?
No, the choice of using the automatic feeder watering system for the rabbits was one that was taken consciously. In that if you take the time to observe your rabbits, they're very clean animals. They're always cleaning themselves. And what I had observed is that they'll dip their paw in the water and groom themselves with it. And if it gets too hot, you'll find that they'll go into the water and stand, put their feet in the water and stand to help cool themselves down. So for that reason, I tend to use an open watering system, especially for my breeding does, so as to facilitate that process. It is something that I'm contemplating doing for my grow cage because they're not in there as long, and therefore I'm figuring that it would not be much of a factor.
Okay. Very, very, very interesting. What size is the cage? What size is usually the size of the cages that you usually use for your breeding cage?
Well, my breeding cages are generally 2 feet deep. Sorry, about 18, 1.5 foot deep and 2 foot wide. And the reason why that is is that you have to be able to reach in all the way to the back of the cage with your hand so that you can handle the rabbit.
And also, when you have it 18 inches, some people like to do it 2 feet and wider. But one of the things is that when you put this structure here to facilitate the cleaning, you want it to be narrow so that it runs off easily. And also, you usually just make it longer, 2 feet by 18 feet deep. And you don't need the height to be more than...
I generally go 2
feet, 18 inches to 2 feet is okay with the height.
For the height.
Right. So that is what is usually necessary.
And your mesh selection, if you notice that I use a little chicken wire on the floor, right? However, what's on the chicken wire is placed on top of the welded wire, which is a much more sturdy material. Because you run the risk, especially again for your breeding cages, where when the kits come out, their feet will get stuck inside the mesh.
Ideally though, I think the 1/2 by 1/2 or even the 1 by 1/2 mesh.
Yeah, once you go 1/2 inch,
you need to have 1/2 inch mesh. At least 1/2 by 1 or 1/2 by 1/2. That is the best, the square mesh, that's the best mesh to use in the floor. And also the U-ring is so corrosive that you have to have galvanized, the good quality galvanized mesh that you use. One of the things I found with chicken mesh is that it rusts very quickly. So
I also use the manure to do a little planting area close to where I have my pens. And I recently prepared this area and sowed some seeds in it, but they haven't started bursting out yet.
One of the things is that most rabbit farmers usually take all the manure and distribute it on their farms and spread it on the field everywhere, you know, because it is such a nutritious for the soil management and so forth. The worms and everything, you know, processes this soil. So this soil is going to be very, very rich, and anything you plant here will do very well. All right, so Mr. Sterling, thanks so much for inviting us to come and have a look at your rabbit farm. We have really covered a lot of content today. And you know, if you have any questions or anything else you need to know, you can have Mr. Sterling's number, and you know, he will give you his ideas. Bearing in mind, there are many different other methods that people use. That is not wrong. It's not a wrong and a right, because there are other ways of doing rabbit rearing that are also very good. Thanks for watching.